When unpacking your Roman shade, just take a second to orientate it and work out which end slides back and forth across the cable and which end is the static end. The static end has an extra grommet which is used to attach the Roman shade to the welded ring. Take a second to inspect your hardware. This should include 2 cables, 2 screw eyes, 2 eye bolts with welded rings, 4 D-shackles, and the correct amount of twisted D-shackles depending on how long your Roman shade is. The next step is to measure and mark where you're going to drill the holes for your hardware. You'll want to measure between the 2 grommets on either side of your Roman shade and then measure and mark this out onto your beam. For the through bolts, you'll want to drill all the way through the beam using a wooden drill bit, either 11/16 or 5/8. On the other side, just make 2 small starter holes for your screw eyes. The next step is installing your screw eyes. You can begin this process with your hands, but once it gets a little tighter, you will want to use a screwdriver to get them in all the way. On the other side, make sure the nut is pushed up against the welded ring and insert the bolt through the beam. You can then add on the washer and the second nut. Tightening this second nut is how you're going to ensure that the cable is properly tensioned, ready for your Roman shade. We're then going to use the D-shackles to attach either side of the cable to the hardware that we've just installed. You'll notice that there will be slack in the cable, which will tighten in the next step. To apply final tensioning to the cable, we're going to tighten up the nut on the outside of the through bolt. You can use a screwdriver to hold the welded ring in place and use a wrench to tighten up the nut. The final step for installing the hardware is to trim the through bolts on either side with a hacksaw. Hanging the Roman shade along the cables is slightly easier with 2 people. However, you can get away with doing this on your own if you prop up one side of the Roman shade onto the other side of the cable that you're installing. Place the twisted D-shackles over the cable and attach to the grommets of the Roman shades. If you are doing this on your own, we find it slightly easier to install a couple of the grommets on one side and then go back and forth installing them on either side until all of the grommets are attached to the cable via the twisted D-shackles. The last step is to secure the static end of the Roman shade onto the welded ring with your last twisted Ds.